Here we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Agorist Unconference. We're here today in beautiful Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and we've got a lineup of 75 amazing libertarian speakers over the course of the weekend. And today we're going to be hearing from 6 of them. We're doing this on 4 different channels. This is the Agorist channel. There are also 3 other channels: Peaceful Evolution, Creative Media, and the Entrepreneur Network. Here in Valley Forge, it's a beautiful day. They said that this is the place where the Patriots spent a harsh winter, but there's some question about the veracity of that story. Matter of fact, it may not have been a harsh winter at all, and I hear there's still some questions about cabin number 7. But in any case, among our many sponsors today, number 1, freekey.com, New Hampshire, Foundation for a Free Society, thelibertyvoice.com, the Freedom Engineering Project, Global Net of Anarchy and Peace, the Fully Informed Jury Association, Center for a Stateless Society, PorkFest, Edgar the Exploiter, Bitcoin, and Dotson for Congress. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors for making this possible today, bringing 75 wonderful speakers out to the world. Our schedule for today, as I mentioned, we have 5 speakers. Our first speaker, starting in a minute or so, will be Steve Scheetz, speaking on stopping government overreach using libertarian ideals. At 1 p.m., we'll have Karen Emery speaking on silver barter, getting back to our roots. 2 p.m., Jim Babb will come up, talking about Spooner to von Nothaus, lessons from revolutionary market anarchists. 3 p.m., Mike Salvi will be coming up, talking about get in where you fit in, how not to get totally overwhelmed as an activist, something I wish I had learned years ago. 4 p.m., we bring in our tax heretic, Larkin Rose, talking about mental preparations to create free markets. And then at 5 p.m., Larkin Rose will be opening up an open discussion portion. We are on the web, as you probably know if you're watching this. And let's get on with the show. Our first speaker is Steve Scheetz from Montgomery County here in Pennsylvania. Steve started his libertarian life at the age of 18 by listening to the political talk show host, the late Irv Homer, great man. He discovered that there were other people who believed, as Steve believed, that there are solutions that differ from the ones presented by the Democrats or Republicans. Those solutions have been tried and proven to be outright failures. Steve has been working to help free people from this rutted mindset ever since. More information can be found out about Steve from stevescheetz.com, SteveScheetz.com. But better yet, we're going to hear from Steve live. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Steve Scheetz. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. As Ken said, I started down the libertarian road by listening to Irv Homer, a champion of libertarian ideals, for as long as I can remember. In the 1990s, I got involved with the libertarian movement. I got involved with the libertarian movement by talking to people like Lee Husted. He's a gentleman who ran for Congress in the 13th District. I learned from libertarians like James Babb in the 2000s and Ken Krawchuk. When I met these people, I wasn't really sure that there was any way to really do anything other than complain about problems. Over the years, we have worked to do not just complain about problems, but to do activities that sort of bring people's mindset and focus around to the problems that affect each and every one of us. I started working with the Montgomery County Libertarians in the mid-2000s as we worked on some of these projects. I became the chairman of the Montgomery County Libertarians. For what reason, I have no idea, but I'm thankful that they gave me that honor. During that time, we started working to promote liberty through liberty forums. These liberty forums were a variety of exercises. We talked about homeschooling. We talked about the drug war and how difficult the drug war has made people's lives in general, and the various problems associated with the drug war. We invited Ernest Hancock to come out and visit us. Those of you who don't know who Ernest Hancock is, Ernest Hancock was the man responsible for the Ron Paul Revolution. Those black signs with revolution, with the love in red, that was Ernest Hancock's idea. He started off with a very small, grassroots, almost no money, and yet he managed to bring the focus of the entire nation down with a little more of a libertarian philosophy. His focus was freeing minds, doing everything we can to free minds, bringing everybody out to that point where freedom is essential. And he's also an anti-structuralist. When he came out and he spoke to us, we sort of felt a kinship with him, because rather than focusing on an actual structured unit, rather than dealing with a big, huge treasury, setting up a group of, how shall we say, well, just a group of groups, we just went out and did things. We didn't really care much about how much it cost, because it didn't cost much. We put in our own money, we put in our own time, and we took care of these things. We made our points known. Right now, I want to focus on our need for government. Cass Sunstein is a gentleman. He's the head of the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. That's a big name for an organization, isn't it? He discussed what a great thing taxes are in the Chicago Tribune. As I was reading this quote the first time, I felt nauseous. But I'm going to read it to you today. So please, if you're reading, understand, be careful. Cass Sunstein. In what sense is the money in our pockets and bank accounts fully ours? Did we earn it by our own autonomous efforts? Could we have inherited it without the assistance of probate courts? Do we save without the support of bank regulators? Could we spend it in the community in which we live without government assistance? Without taxes, there would be no liberty. Without taxes, there would be no property. Without taxes, few of us would have any assets worth defending. He goes on to say, it is a dim fiction that some people enjoy and exercise their rights without placing any burden whatsoever on the public. There is no liberty without dependency. There is no freedom without slavery. Oh, sorry, that was me. This is why we should celebrate Tax Day. That was Cass Sunstein. This is sort of what we're up against. How many of the people in this room want to refute that statement? Yeah, almost everybody, right? I know I do. How many government regulations are we allowed to live without? I stress allowed because our government has taken it upon itself to sort of force the issue, to sort of force our dependency on it. Are banks allowed to exist without federal regulations? Bless you. According to Cass Sunstein, we're supposed to be grateful for all this. When government deregulated the banking system, what happened? They lowered and made it easier for banks who were insured by the government. They made it easier for them to borrow more money, overextend themselves, and thus fail. We've seen this. they had to create a method by which their quote-unquote racist lending policies, which revolved around not lending money to people who couldn't pay it back. Imagine that. Not loaning somebody money who can't pay it back is racist. Okay? Do you need government to help you spend your money? I don't. We have this problem in the United States right now. We've had our Federal Reserve System. I stress it's our Federal Reserve System because we allow it to exist. Our Federal Reserve System has started this process called quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is whereby they print money out of thin air and buy back treasuries from banks like Goldman Sachs, who owe the US taxpayers billions of dollars. They buy these treasuries at a profit for Goldman Sachs. So basically, they're printing money out of thin air, making your currency worth less, meanwhile making a profit for a company who is supposed to be paying that money back to us. It's sort of a tax on a tax on a tax, isn't it? We have a problem in this country. The people who started Liberty Dollar were found guilty. They were found guilty of committing fraud against the United States government, of creating counterfeit money. Those of you who are familiar with Liberty Dollar and are familiar with silver-backed currency, you all know that this money was backed by actual hard metal. Well, those of us who started investing in silver back a while ago were purchasing these silver dollars, these silver $20 coins, an ounce of silver, for $15 to $16. Now those coins are worth 36 bucks, yet they still say $20. This is because we have this problem with quantitative easing. It's rather amusing in a real sad, horrifying sort of way that somehow creating money out of thin air is legal, while creating a currency that is backed by silver is illegal. That's the government. Do we need government? Did the government help you buy the car in your driveway? Did it help you come up with the mortgage to buy your house? Does it help you pay for the driveway you have to beg them to repave? Do they help you mow your lawn? Pay for your landscaping? No, they don't. Yet, you're expected to pay the government for their services. You have to ask the government for permission to fix the garage door that your teenage son or daughter drove into last weekend. You have to ask the government to replace your roof that happened to be leaking because of the bad snowstorm. You have to ask the government to put a fence up to keep your trash cans from blowing over your neighbor's lawn when the high winds come up. Why? Why do we have to ask the government anything? The government, who, if you don't follow their instructions, will take your property away from you. The government, who, if you do follow their instructions, according to one woman, well, not even according to, because we've all been in Abington Township, many of us have been in Abington Township, where a woman had her property taken from her while she was following the rules of government. Government has done things that have been horrifying in all accounts. They've dropped a bomb on a city block because people weren't following government rules. After they dropped said bomb on City Block, through a no-bid contract to a certain politician's brother-in-law, it wound up costing the city taxpayers $1 million per house over the course of over a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. They're still not right. Are we disgusted yet? There is a way out. Ayn Rand, in her book Atlas Shrugged, described the valley. And this is sort of where we're getting to with agorism, this valley. The people in the valley all prescribe to the same philosophy, that nothing of value is ever gained without offering value in return. The people in this valley came out and they said point blank, I am not doing anything for my fellow man's benefit unless it specifically helps me. Yes, this is a selfish notion. But it also brings out the best of people, because if you know that I'm not going to give you anything of mine without offering something of equal value in return, you also know that I will compensate equally. This is where we need to go as a society. We, the people in this room, I'm speaking to the choir. We, the people in this room, need to go out and demonstrate to our neighbors, our entire community, that yes, we have something of value to offer each other. And yes, we can do these things without need for government intervention. I brought Libertarian Solutions to an organization of bicyclists who were used to depending on the government to solve their problems. I came to the conclusion the government was not going to be the answer. The government was not going to solve the problem. I decided that I was going to organize a group of people to fix the problem ourselves. And we lowered the rate of crime in Norristown along the bike path, where people were getting robbed, assaulted, beaten. We stopped that because we got together, we saw a problem as people, and we fixed it. We didn't need the government to say, you must do this. We didn't need the government to say, you must pay for this. We went out and we just did. It's these simple issues. Every member of your neighborhood, when you decide that it's no longer the government's business to tell you that you can't fix your garage door, when you decide and it's no longer the government's business to tell you that you can't pave your driveway, when your neighbors all agree to this, you can go to your township and take your power back. You can go to your county and take your power back. You can go to the state and
take your power back.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this particular time, we're standing here. We're standing here this weekend on something pretty great. We have hundreds of speakers who are all pining to get involved with agorism. Agorism is that place where we can set up our infrastructure, an infrastructure that will basically handle all those problems that we depend on government for. We don't need a group of power-hungry people telling us what we are allowed to do with our own property. It is our property. They're not paying your mortgage. They're not paying your car payments. You are. You're the one who is handling the snow on your street. You're the one who's handling the snow on your sidewalk. You're the one who handles your house. They don't. You do. These people are the people who are taking from you with offering no value. It's time to take the power back. Do you have any questions or comments?
We have a question from the online audience from David Voluntarius Morris. He says, how does this take your power back thing work?
Taking the power back is simply stopping the government from reaching into your neighborhoods. If you have your neighborhood coming together as a group of people and say, I'm sorry, you don't matter to us anymore. It doesn't matter how many edicts your township supervisors are going to be writing. You're ignoring them. You're ignoring them because they don't have any power anymore. The people in your neighborhood, the consent of the governed is what they're depending on. And if there is no consent of the governed, there is no centralized government. The dictator has no more power. Any more questions?
What about situations where dealing with police where we don't consent, but that doesn't seem to affect their ability to put us in handcuffs?
It's the same thing. Your neighborhood. It is your neighborhood. You decide who is allowed in your neighborhood. If you have your neighbors, if you have 100 houses in your neighborhood, and you decide we don't need the police to monitor our backyard because we are monitoring our backyard. Sorry, officer, you're not permitted in our neighborhood. And it might work for a little while that they're going to try and do what they can to say, no, you can't do that. But when you're firm and you have enough neighbors, a large number of neighborhoods who say, we don't need you anymore. We've got each other's backs. The police won't matter. The township won't matter. The county won't matter. Ladies and gentlemen, the state
Doesn't matter.
Thank you. Any more questions?
We have another question from the online audience. Josh Plotkin asks, how do we convince our neighbors to not consent?
This is the hard part. This is the hard part because we have people like Cass Sunstein out there saying that it's okay for the government to lie and manipulate the people because the government is filled with goodness and wisdom. Filled with goodness and wisdom. This past couple weeks, we invaded Libya because of our government's goodness and wisdom. Was it wise to start yet another endless war of aggression? Do you think we're going to get out of Libya in the next couple days, couple weeks, couple months, couple years? I don't. We're still sitting in Bosnia, for God's sake. We're going to be in Libya for a very long time. It's going to be profitless. It's going to be wasting more money than we could ever possibly make. And the only reason why they're doing it is to assert their goodness and wisdom on somebody who does not need it or want it. Any more questions?
Steve, you mentioned before about stealing an old lady's property.
Yes.
What's that story?
That story, thank you, Ken. That story was something that happened a couple years ago. The township of Abington decided that they wanted to put a redundant library on a property that was owned by an elderly widow. Now, by way of background, her family had more or less built Abington Township. And as they built Abington Township, they were one of the largest property holders in the township, their family. And one of these properties was a storefront. This storefront was attempted by the family to rent out. They rented out to a variety of companies, but over the course of a certain number of years, they were trying to rent it out to other companies. For example, the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, a drugstore. The township decided, no, you can't have those people as clients because there's not enough parking spaces. They were missing 4 parking spaces per the what have you that the government wanted them to have, the regulation. Finally, Abington Township decided that they were going to take this property, offer the barest minimum amount of money for this property to the family, and say, we're going to take it and we're going to put a library in this place. The township library, by way of background, is a few blocks away up the road. There's another annex library that's also around the corner, but they wanted this storefront as a library. And, oh, by the way, they decided that they would waive the government regulation for the appropriate number of parking spaces so that they could use this particular property. We went and we protested this. We protested this because it is absolutely an absurdity. It is wrong. It is disgusting. This is one of those places where we need to convince our neighbors that the government and what they say doesn't matter, because if we don't, then we'll have problems like Abington Township, who decides that they want to take your property for whatever reason and give you nothing or next to nothing for it. They did it again before this little old lady. They did it previous to a man who had a cemetery. They wanted to take a certain number of acres from this man, and he decided they wanted to pay $2 million for it. He said, the fair market value for this property is $5 million. I will take $5 million. They said, no, we're going to give you $2 million, and we're going to take your property. So he said, well, we'll see you in court. So after spending $15 million of the taxpayer dollars, they wound up being able to take this man's property for another $2 million. This is what government does. It's a failure. It is fraud, waste, and abuse. And we in this room have to convince our neighbors that we really don't need that kind of safety net. People feel afraid that there is no safety net, that we need a government to sit there and catch us when we fall. We don't need to be caught. We really don't need to be caught. That's what we have neighbors for. That's what we have friends for. That's what we have family for. We can all catch each other as time goes by. Any more questions?
Sounds like you're saying it might be easier to rally your neighbors if you picked a cause that most people are against anyway, like maybe the taking of property or perhaps an increase in taxes.
Absolutely. The question was, it's easier to get your neighbors to support you if it's a cause that they would be absolutely against in the first place. For example, in the Abington Township case, we had a lot of the community, a large number of community members come out and join us because of how wrong this land grab was. The problem that we run into oftentimes is these cause du jours, if you will. When you have these problems like a tax increase that everybody's against, a property grab that everybody's against, these are single instances. The people that the neighbors that you're trying to convince, they're constantly being barraged every day that they cannot exist except by the good grace of these wise and good people in government. These wise and good people in government who hand out no bid contracts to their relatives. These wise and noble people in government who force us to pay our taxes while not paying theirs. These wise and noble people in government who commit more crimes against the people of the United States than we can count. My fellow libertarians and agorists, I'm hoping that we can have a really wonderful day today, and I'm hoping that we can all see that we can function without government, and maybe we can persuade those in our neighborhoods that they can also exist without government.
Thank you. You were listening to Steve Scheetz of Montgomery County Libertarians. We are going to take a short break, and we will reconvene in about 25 minutes. Sound good? All right. Thank you very much.